How's it going, everybody? I'm back in Fallout 4. I'm in Abernathy Farm again, and this time I'm building a house for Hancock. So, Hancock, being as accepting as he is of all people at Good Neighbor, I decided he was probably the only person that would live even relatively close to strong. So that's why he's on this side of the settlement, because he's probably the only person that I'm going to put even relatively close to strong. And the bottom portion of this house is pretty simple, but I didn't want to build like massive builds for every single person. And Hancock's is pretty simple. I knew that I wanted to use that cutout because it's flat on top, because I want to have a balcony. Because in Good Neighbor, he has a balcony. That's how he addresses the people of Good Neighbor, because he's a leader in Good Neighbor. And so I knew that I wanted to have a balcony out there for him to go out on and address anybody if he feels like it, even though he's not necessarily the leader here. He does have a balcony to remind him of home at Good Neighbor. And so I go ahead and I give him this little porch, and that's how he's going to get up into his house rather than just a staircase. And like I was explaining before, though, the second story of this build is a lot more complicated than the bottom story. So all I'm doing right now is measuring about where that bottom wall meets up on the top of the concrete pillar. And so I go ahead and I get my walls ready, and I attempt to pillar glitch them onto the top of the other walls. And you can see that it will work at some angles, but they're still kind of glitching into each other, and I really wanted to minimize that as much as possible. So I'm just trying to figure out now where I need to have this exactly. And right now it seems like it's a little low, so that's why I move it down a little bit. So I left all this in. There will be some cuts, but I left all this in to show you guys kind of how I deal with like issues I run across while building, and like how I like kind of troubleshoot, I guess. Um, to deal with this, I kind of figure out that it's actually those wall ends that really cause the main issue with the build. So I get that in, but the problem was that floors weren't really snapping. And so I go to check to see if floors would snap, and they do, so I know that that's just too low for the floor to snap. So I left a floor on in attempt to actually get a floor in there anyway. And you see, I tried to almost like build the room, the second floor, in before, and then I figure out that right here, I thought maybe that was the issue. So then I go ahead and I try to put this in to kind of give myself still a area to base it off of. And that other wall, that wall I just took down, has such an issue with placing things on corners that I had to take it off and I had to redo it. And so eventually I finally get the angles right, and I had taken off this side and I had taken off the side that goes over the door, which would make sense because the door is the same as the wall cutouts, so it's got that little roof. And it was just causing issues when pillar glitching. And so you'll see that I finally get it in here. And right now it's just little small fine tuning, trying to get it at the right angle, and I'm trying to see if I can get it at the right angle from this side of the build, and it ended up working out pretty well. And then I go ahead and I place the rest of the floors in. And I was going to use the warehouse tab to kind of break up the textures or whatever. And then I went back to the wood tab and I went ahead and used those shack floors on that side. And I put a staircase in and it snapped right into the floor. And then I replaced the wall again. And so now it's me trying to actually board up the rest of the upstairs. So trying to close it off was kind of a pain because this side of the build is higher. So what would have worked that I notice now is if I had taken that door cut off and I had taken this half, like this prefab, this wall cutout out as well, I could have easily snapped those to the floors and then snapped those pieces back on, but I did not do that. So you'll notice that they are like slightly higher. And again, it was the same issue on the other side where I couldn't snap to the floors because of this lower cutout. And then you see that it ends up fitting. And then I knew I wanted to have a door to a balcony, like I had told you previously. And so to do that, I went ahead and I did something. This is me replacing that wall right here. That's all that was. And I went ahead and did something similar to what I did in Piper's house in the newsstand that I built for her. I went ahead and I made a kind of door out of the half shack walls by kind of angling this one into the other wall a little bit so it extended a little bit further. And you'll notice that this does take a little while because it's a lot of just fine tuning. But I eventually get it and I can fit through. And then I knew that it was a little big for a door, or a little small for a door. So I wanted to scoot it in a little bit. Also, I wanted it to not be so open. That's why I turned it around. And so it looks a little bit more closed off. And so now I go ahead and put some railings around the balcony that I wanted him to have. And you'll notice that they won't really sit on top of it like I'd like them to. So I go ahead and I jump down and I use the scaffolding frame because it's got a higher reach to actually place it up on the side, and it fits perfect. It ends up working really well. And so I just based that off of the railing on the front, the height. That's how I figured out the height to place it. And then I went ahead and I picked another wall and I wanted to see if it would just snap on, but you saw that it would slightly do it, but not at the right height that I wanted. So I tried with the scaffolding to just do it on its own, but I honestly think that that pillar was just kind of in the way. But it doesn't matter. I actually just went in and picked it up with the pillar, so I have double the height. And I went ahead and pillar glitched this other railing in. And it ends up looking pretty nice. And then I go ahead and place some roofs on to finish the house. So now it's just some fine details around the house. What I pretty much work on right here is closing off the underside of the house so that it looks a little bit more sturdy. Because I don't like to have too much of the foundations exposed when I do builds, because I feel like when they're exposed, it makes the build not look as sturdy or as set up as I would like it to look like. And whenever you add those, it really just makes the build like look better, I think. Just gives it a little extra support, and I think it looks good. And so I go ahead and do it on the back side as well. There's not a whole lot of space back here to really do pillar glitches or anything like that. So uh, I have to be careful about not exiting the workshop mode and leaving the work area. But I went ahead and looked in there to see how much space there was, because I didn't want it to be wide open around that corner, because if it was, I was going to move it a little bit closer, but it wasn't that bad. So then I am going to go ahead and pillar glitch this last one into the last spot. And I actually like how the textures kind of match on this, but at the same time, there's those beams that kind of break it up a little bit. And so I'm just trying to get the angle right, and you can see that there's still a little bit of space on this end, but it's so small that honestly I don't really care. But next I wanted to work on that front area. So right there in that corner, I knew that I wanted to kind of block that off. I left my rugs someplace and I'm sitting here searching. There they are. And so my idea for that was that I was going to kind of close off that front area so that it didn't quite look like it was floating. Because like I said, I like everything to be supported and everything to look realistic. So I go ahead and I actually pillar glitch this in here in a moment. This is me just trying to get the pillar to be able to pick it up from the front. And so I go ahead and I pillar glitch this in right there so that it doesn't look like it's floating. And then I go inside and I do a little bit of interior details as well. So I go ahead and block off this stairs, so when you come in it's not quite so open. It looks a little bit more closed off and sectioned off. And then having stairs upstairs, I wanted there to be rails. And since I had these rails in here and outside, I wanted to make sure there wasn't too many repeating textures, so I go ahead and I get rid of that one because I didn't want you to be able to use both of them. And then that one ended up glitching in just right, so it worked out. But this is the finished build, decorated and all. I thought that this actually ended up looking a lot cooler than I had anticipated. I thought that it looked pretty plain outside, but when you go inside, that's really where it kind of shines. I added a few decorations, and since it's Hancock and he's all about those chems, I went ahead and gave him a chem station, some supplies, and then chems and a chem box and some supplies to cook with. And then again over by his bed, I gave him more chems. And this is just his house, so there's only one bed in here because I intend on having just the followers in this settlement and maybe having some of the level 4 merchants and giving them some shops. It just depends on the amount I can build in this settlement, because I don't want to kill the frames in this settlement. But as you can see, I really like the builds that I've done so far, and I really liked this build too. I thought that it fit Hancock pretty well. I don't have him here yet, so he's not here to explore it, but Piper decided that she was going to.
Look alive.
And if you guys like this video, make sure you guys let me know. Check out some of my other videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one, guys.